The storm was coming, a deadly, silent storm. Temperatures were dropping fast soon. It would reach minus 120 degrees Celsius. Even machines could fail in that cold. Nothing could live there. Nothing should, but something was there. Above the frozen land, a silver sphere hovered quietly. It made no sound, no light. Hidden inside it, an alien scholar observed the Earth below. His name was Zelter, from the planet Venari. He was not a warrior, not a leader, just a watcher, a collector of knowledge. And now, he was watching Earth. His mission was simple. Study how Earth handled extreme environments. The Arctic Circle was perfect. No cities, no heat, no rescue. Just ice, snow, and silence. Zelter had come to witness the planet's weakness. His species believed humans were soft, fragile, not built for the stars, not a threat, not a mystery. But then, the mystery walked into the storm. Zelter noticed movement on the ice. A small human figure appeared in the distance, walking slowly. Across the white wasteland, no ship, no protection, just a thick coat, a backpack, and strange confidence. The alien leaned forward in his seat, his four eyes narrowing. This human was alone, by choice. The storm was hours away, but already the wind was rising. The temperature was deadly. The cold could burn skin. Still, the human kept moving, step by step, without fear. He stopped near a small ridge, pulled off his pack, and began clearing snow with his hands. Not rushing, not panicking. It was almost like a ritual. Zelter activated his scanner. The results confused him. The human's heart rate was steady. His muscles were not shaking from cold. His body was functioning far longer than expected. Zoomed in. The human was gathering snow, shaping it, stacking it. A circle began to form. The alien's eyes widened. Was he building something? The human's hands moved with skill. Each block of snow was cut and placed carefully. It wasn't random. It was a structure. It was shelter. Zelter opened a new file in his data logs. Human behavior, igloo construction, in extreme conditions. He had seen videos of this before, in Earth archives, but that was training, under safe control. This was real. No safety net. No help. The storm began to howl. Ice crystals danced across the ground like needles. The sky darkened. Most living beings would run, but not this human. He continued working, even as snow covered his shoulders. He wiped his face, took a deep breath, and added another block to the wall. Zelter was silent. The human's movements were not robotic, yet there was no hesitation. He knew exactly what he was doing. The alien checked again. No hidden tech, no protective energy field, just clothing, basic tools, and a human will. Then, something strange happened. The human paused. His legs shook a little. He sat down for a moment, breathing hard. Zelter's hand moved toward the emergency alert button. He wasn't allowed to help, but he could send coordinates to Earth if the human collapsed. But the human didn't fall. After resting just 2 minutes, he stood again, drank from a small flask, and picked up where he left off. He made no sound, but his eyes showed something: focus, purpose. Zelter stared at him, forgetting to record for a moment. Why? Why stay here? Why not leave? The aliens? Thoughts were spinning now. The Council had always believed humans were reactive, emotional, unplanned creatures. But this was something else. As the wind screamed louder, the igloo's shape became clearer. The walls curved perfectly. The top was nearly closed. Inside, it would be warm enough to survive, and this human knew that. Zelter spoke quietly into his recorder. This subject has not only resisted panic in deadly conditions, he is prepared, he has adapted, alone without assistance. Suddenly, the human looked up just for a second, directly toward the sky, directly toward Zelter's ship. As if he knew someone was watching. Zelter froze. Did he see me? The alien turned off the outside lights and backed the ship slightly into the clouds. When he looked again, the human was placing the final block onto the igloo roof. Then he crawled inside and disappeared. Outside, the storm fully arrived, whiteout, winds over 150 kilometers per hour. But inside that small dome of snow and human will, with silence, Zelter stared for a long time. This was not what he expected. Not weakness, not confusion, but control. And then he whispered something only he could hear. What kind of species chooses this? And the recorder blinked red. The log had begun. The storm screamed louder now, like a living thing trying to tear the world apart. Ice particles flew sideways in the wind, biting into the land like tiny sharp needles. The temperature had dropped below minus 120 degrees Celsius. Even the sensors in Zelter's ship were struggling to remain stable. Outside was no place for anything alive. But the human, he was still inside the igloo. The small structure stood firm against the storm. Zelter had studied thousands of environments across the galaxy: volcanoes, deserts, vacuum. He had seen survival chambers, pressure domes, and thermal suits. But this was just snow, ice piled together. A primitive shell made by human hands in the face of nature's worst, and it was working. From inside his ship, Zelter activated a mic. It was no bigger than a bug, almost invisible to the eye. He carefully guided it down through the snow, sneaking it near the igloo's base. It found a small opening just enough to slip in. Darkness. Then, a faint orange glow. The human had made a fire, not with high-tech or fancy tools, but with old methods: friction, heat, and determination. He was sitting inside, his hands stretched toward the flame, eyes calm. His breath was steady, misting in the cold, but he was alive. More than that, he looked at peace. Zelter leaned closer to the screen. The human had arranged his small tools neatly: a knife, a small pan, a water pouch. His jacket was frosted but thick. He had even used snow to seal parts of the entrance, blocking the worst of the wind. It wasn't just luck. This was experience, Zelter whispered. He planned this, but why? Why come here at all? Zelter opened another window on his screen. He accessed the galactic database on human behavior. Most reports spoke of chaos, emotion, unpredictability. Earth had always been viewed as wild and unrefined. But this wasn't wild. It was careful, calm, precise. The human took out a note, a digital one, but a paper journal. He began writing. Not rushing, just recording. As if this was normal. Zelter's data feed recorded everything. Temperature inside the igloo was holding steady. Around 0 degrees Celsius, warm enough to survive. Warm enough to think. And in that space, under deadly skies, the human was thinking. The drone moved quietly, changing angle. The human paused and looked straight at it, right into the lens. Zelter froze. The drone was silent, hidden, but somehow, the human knew. He didn't move suddenly. He didn't panic. He just gave the smallest smile, like someone who had been expecting a visitor. Then, he spoke. Not loudly, not to the drone directly, but into the silence. I wondered when you'd show up. The alien's breath caught in his throat. Was this directed at him? The human kept talking, his voice soft but sure. You aliens always watch when we're at the edge, never when we're safe. Only when we bleed or break or freeze. Zelter's translator caught every word. There was no anger in the voice, just quiet understanding. But here's what you still don't get, the human said, adding wood to the small fire. We don't break the way others do. Cold doesn't scare us. Hunger doesn't stop us. Pain isn't new to us. We train in it. We grow through it. He leaned back, letting the fire warm his face. This isn't about survival. This is about message. We want you to see. We want you to understand. Zelter sat silently. His hands hovered above his console, unsure whether to respond, record, or retreat. The human reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny flag Earth symbol, faded and folded. He placed it gently on the icy floor beside him, facing the drone. Next time, don't just watch, he said. Ask. With that, he leaned back, pulled his hood over his head, and closed his eyes. The fire cracked softly. The drone hovered, quietly, unsure what to do, and far above, inside his ship, Zelter stared at the screen, feeling something strange in his chest, a mix of confusion, respect, and something very close to fear. This was not what he expected, not from a species that lived on a blue and green world, surrounded by oceans and forests. They were training in death places, mastering ice and silence, not for fun, not for record, but for readiness. As the storm howled outside and the igloo remained steady, Zelter realized something deeply unsettling. They weren't just surviving, they were preparing, and someone somewhere had better start paying attention. The storm had grown wild. Thick winds circled the icy plains like a creature trying to swallow everything whole. Visibility was nearly zero. Even with enhanced vision, Zelter couldn't see past a few meters beyond the snowdrifts. His vessel shook slightly in the wind, its shields groaning under the cold. The ship's systems kept sending quiet warnings, external temperatures, at critical limits. Recommend withdrawal. But Zelter ignored them. He was too focused on the human. The igloo still stood, half covered by the falling snow, yet holding strong. That small dome, built by hand under a sky that punished every breath, refused to fall. And inside it, against every calculation, every alien record, was life. Zelter hovered over the controls of his microtron. He had kept it inside the igloo, recording everything. The human's resting heartbeat, the inner temperature, even the fire's glow as it flickered warmly in the dark. These small things shouldn't have mattered to a scholar, but they did. The human was sleeping now, wrapped in layers, arms crossed, head low, not a panic sleep, not collapse. It was controlled rest. Zelter's logs showed he had eaten only a small ration, melted some ice for water, and written down a few more notes before sleeping. That was it. Zelter reviewed the data again. By all reasoning, this should not be possible. The extreme cold, the storm pressure, the lack of technology, none of it matched the result. The human should have failed. Yet here he was, alive and quiet. But one question stayed in Zelter's mind like a thorn. Why was he here? No one lived in this place. There were no homes, no research centers nearby. The closest outpost was hundreds of kilometers away. No signals had been sent. No emergency beacons. This was not an accident. Then, Zelter's screen lit up. A new file appeared on his secure frequency sent from the Galactic Watch. Station in orbit. Classified human file detected. Source: Earth Military. Archives Hidden Protocol 7. Zelter opened it with hesitation. The words were simple. Confirmed human presence in Arctic training zone. No rescue needed. Subject is part of cold endurance test program. Observation permitted. The alien stared at the message. It wasn't a lost traveler. It wasn't a mistake. This was planned, deliberate. The human was here for training. Zelter leaned back, his mind spinning. That changed everything. It wasn't just one individual challenging death. It was a test, a mission, a trial prepared by their own kind, and he was just one of many. He looked back at the drone feed. The human stirred, rubbed his eyes, and slowly sat up. The fire had burned low. He didn't seem alarmed. Instead, he opened his coat slightly, letting the chill bite his skin. Why? Then the answer appeared in behavior. He was hardening himself, adjusting, letting his body feel the cold again to sharpen the mind. To prepare, Zeltor's log entry continued. Subject does not seek comfort. Subject seeks control. There is no attempt to call for help, signal others, or escape. Instead, subject demonstrates deep trust in his ability to manage nature with limited tools. This is not survival training. This is endurance evolution. Outside, the storm began to slow. The wind softened. The white blur began to clear. In the distance, ice hills took shape again. Light returned slowly to the frozen world. And then the human moved. He placed the flag back into his pocket. He closed the notebook. He folded the emergency blanket and tied it tightly onto his backpack. No signs of fear. No doubt in the eyes. He was getting ready to leave. Zeltar whispered to himself. Where will he go now? The drone hovered silently as the human crawled out of the igloo, blinking at the bright snow. The world was quiet now, still and frozen. He stood tall, stretched his arms, and looked toward the horizon. There was no panic in his body, no rush. He seemed satisfied. Then, without a word, he started walking. Not randomly but toward something. Zelter activated satellite view. Far away, barely visible, a shape was hidden under the snow. A pod? A shelter? No, a gate. A human-built portal, camouflaged, used for training extractions. He had known where it was all along. His path had been planned. And Zeltor felt something twist in his chest. Something unfamiliar. Respect. The alien activated his voice recorder once more. This was not survival. It was communication. A silent message from Earth to anyone who watches. We are not weak. We are not waiting. They do not shout their power. They show it, quietly, coldly, without the need to impress. The microdrone rose into the sky. Zelter didn't need to follow anymore. The lesson was complete, but the feeling, it stayed. He thought he came here to study limits. Instead, he had witnessed a beginning, the kind of beginning that makes the galaxy take a step back and wonder what humanity is truly preparing for. Snow crunched beneath the human's boots, each step deliberate and steady. The storm had passed, leaving behind a land painted in pure white silence. Ice crystals hung in the air like glitter, and the sky had softened into a pale, quiet blue. Everything was still except him. Zelter watched from above, unmoving, breath held. The human hadn't looked back at the igloo he built. He hadn't paused to rest or wonder. He had simply stood, scanned the endless white horizon, and chosen a direction with absolute calm. What was he heading toward? Zelter adjusted the ship's sensors and followed silently. His microdrone hovered high, keeping distance but always focused. There was no panic in the human's pace, no hesitation. The snow was deep. The wind still sharp, but he walked through it like it was nothing. Each minute added more weight to Zelter's confusion. This human had faced the deadliest cold known on the planet, and didn't just survive, he had adapted. The alien had seen many beings across the stars, some intelligent, some powerful, but most, when faced with nature at its worst, chose to run, shield, or escape. This one had done none of that. He had stayed, he had learned, he had endured. Zelter opened his personal notes. These were not for the council. These were for himself. Human behavior continues to contradict data. Subject shows no signs of distress, fatigue, or mental stress. Survival instinct is present, but it walks side by side with focus. This is not a creature reacting to danger. This is a creature practicing for something more. The human paused on a ridge. Below him, barely visible beneath a blanket of snow, was a faint shape, smooth and curved. Not natural, man-made. The human stepped forward, brushed away snow with his gloves, and revealed the edge of a sealed hatch. Zelter blinked. It wasn't just a training zone. It was a hidden structure. The hatch opened with a quiet hiss. Warm mist flowed out into the cold. The human ducked inside, disappearing into the shadows. Zelter sent the drone closer. It hovered above the open entrance, then followed carefully. Inside, the walls were smooth metal, coated with frost-resistant film. Lights blinked in low-power mode. No alarms, no guards. Just cold design made for hidden use. The human moved deeper into the structure, his boots echoing softly. He reached a small control panel, pressed a few buttons, and the door sealed behind him. The room warmed, lights brightened, and voices spoke. Human voices. Zelter zoomed in. There were more of them. 3 others, sitting around a heated table, wrapped in thick gear. They looked up as he entered. One of them smiled. Took you long enough? Storm came early, he answered casually, removing his gloves. Good, said another. They've been watching, they always do, he replied. Zelter leaned back in his seat. His mind raced. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't one human doing something unusual. This was a team. This was a routine. Zelter listened closely. The group shared warm drinks, passed around dried food, and began discussing their notes not just about survival, but about reactions, how cold affected decision-making, how isolation reshaped instinct, how deep discomfort revealed true character. They were not just surviving, they were studying themselves. They were learning how to remain sharp in the worst of conditions, not because they had to, but because they chose to. And then, one of them said something that sent chills through Zeltor's core. "We got word from Base 9, she said. They've started the Mars polar phase. Wind speeds double, temperatures worse than here, and the volunteers, already there." Zelter felt it fully now. This wasn't about Earth's cold, it was about preparing for worse places. Colder than Earth, more dangerous than any forest, mountain, or desert. They were training in secret for environments no one dared touch. Not for attention, not for approval, but for readiness. He opened a direct message to the Council. Request permission to extend Earth observation program. Human behavior under extreme conditions reveals patterns of deliberate self-testing. This species is not adjusting to survival. They are engineering it not for the present, but for expansion into the most unwelcoming corners of the galaxy. As he sent the message, Zeltor's drone floated silently outside the sealed room, watching as the humans continued their routine. There was laughter now, quiet, relaxed, not loud, not proud, just a group that had done the treated it like a normal shift. This was their normal, Zelter whispered aloud, almost to himself. They walk into storms, build homes from snow, smile in silence, and never ask for help. He looked out the window of his ship. The ice stretched forever, but now it didn't look like a prison. It looked like a classroom, and the students inside, they were learning faster than anyone expected. Asterisk above the icy land, the clouds had begun to break apart. Thin sunlight touched the white surface below, making the snow glisten like crushed diamonds. But the beauty of the Arctic still hid its danger. Even now, temperatures remained deadly. Yet somewhere beneath that cold silence, 4 humans sat calmly inside a hidden base drinking hot liquid, writing in notebooks, and speaking like it was an ordinary day. Zelter floated in his vessel, unmoving. His microdrone continued its silent watch just outside the sealed metal shelter. The humans had disappeared into it after the storm, but what Zelter had seen before that moment still echoed in his mind. One of them had survived the full storm dash alone. He had built a shelter using nothing but snow and willpower. No calls for help, no advanced tools, no panic. And now, he sat quietly among his team, warm and focused, as if the world hadn't tried to freeze him just hours earlier. Zelter tapped into the drone's sound receiver again. The humans were speaking, and every word felt heavier than the last. "We'll transmit the logs in the morning," said the woman with short dark hair. "Base wants updates on mental performance under isolation. They're tracking focus drift." The one who had built the igloo nodded. Dreams were sharper. "This time, cold changes brain patterns. Makes you remember old things." "Good," the other said. "That's what they want. Deep recall, core behavior." Zelter didn't understand all of it, but one thing was becoming clear. This wasn't just a survival test. This was a psychological mission. The cold was a tool, not a trap. And they weren't just testing bodies. They were testing minds. Zelter opened his personal log again. He paused before typing. This section was beyond science. Now it was something deeper. Human subjects continue to show complex focus in extreme environments. They are not simply trained to endure, they are taught to explore their own responses under pressure. Every decision appears measured even under pain and exhaustion. Then, one of the humans stood up and walked toward a storage wall. He pressed his palm against a scanner. A panel slid open. Behind it, layers of sealed suits, gear, and oxygen packs. A second chamber beyond that led downward. "Is it ready?" he asked. The woman replied, "Yes. But the cave conditions haven't changed. Still -140 lower oxygen." "Good," he said. "We go in 2 hours." Zelter zoomed in with the drone's lens. The cave? They were going back outside. Willingly, it didn't make sense, but that was the truth of it. These humans were not hiding from danger, they were walking into it, on purpose. Again and again, one of the younger men stretched, cracked his neck, and asked, "Do you think anyone's actually watching us?" The igloo builder gave a faint smile. "Always." He looked at the camera directly, straight through the tiny drone's lens, as if he could see the alien on the other side. Zeltor's 4 eyes widened slightly. His hands floated over the controls but didn't move. He said nothing, but the human nodded as if that was enough. "We don't train like this because we enjoy it," the human said quietly. "We train like this because one day, someone will need to survive where no help is coming, like on Mars." Another asked further. There was a pause. Then the igloo builder added, "Maybe where there's no air, no heat, no hope." Woman replied, "So we take Earth's worst and turn it into practice." That line stayed in Zelter's mind longer than it should have. We take Earth's worst and turn it into practice. They were not resisting hardship, they were shaping themselves through it. Zeltor had seen training programs across hundreds of worlds. He had watched species push their limits. But those programs always involved control, backup systems, safety. Exits. Here. There were no comfort systems. Only choice. Pure choice. To enter. Nature's cruelty again and again, not for glory, not for war, but for readiness. And still, they smiled. Still, they joked. Ate together. Talked about memories. Made notes. Not as victims of the cold, but as friends sharing warmth in the heart of it. Zeltor leaned back in his chair, something shifting quietly inside him. He had come to Earth to collect behavior patterns, to study human survival from a safe, curious distance. But now, he felt like an uninvited guest at something ancient, something quiet and powerful that didn't care who was watching. The humans didn't perform for the stars. They didn't shout their strength, they just acted, and their actions spoke, louder than any signal he had ever received. He stared at the screen, at the group of humans preparing to walk into a cave filled with wind and dark and biting frost, and he whispered into his report, "They do not test their bodies. They teach their minds to find peace in places where peace should not exist. They shape strength from silence, and they carry it forward like a torch no storm can put out." Outside, the snow had started again. Softly, inside, the humans were readying their gear once more, packing, checking, smiling, and Zeltor knew they weren't finished. The snow was falling again, soft now, not sharp. Like a whisper brushing the frozen ground. Wind curved over the ridges, gentle but cold, as if the Arctic itself had paused to breathe. The land had returned to silence. But beneath it, something had changed forever. Inside the hidden chamber, the humans moved with quiet discipline. They checked straps, adjusted gear, sealed their suits. Each movement was calm, practiced, no rush, no hesitation. Outside, the temperature was falling again. 140 grados bajo cero, wind speed rising, visibility shrinking, but they didn't flinch. Zeltor watched from above, his hands hovering over the console. He had seen many things in his journeys. Civilizations crumble, worlds awaken, stars vanish, but this moment felt different. He wasn't watching survival anymore, he was witnessing transformation. The humans were preparing to enter the ice cave, one that ran beneath the Arctic floor, deeper than any natural formation on Earth. Conditions inside were worse than the surface. Tighter, darker, colder, a place not even the planet's own life dared to touch. Yet they went willingly, not because of orders, not for records, but because they chose to understand what waited in places others feared. As they stood at the sealed exit door, one of them spoke softly, almost as if offering words not just to teammates, but to the land itself. "We learn from the cold, not to defeat it, but to carry it." Zeltor pressed record. Subject displays complete awareness of danger, but continues without hesitation. Group displays unity.com, and purpose under extreme pressure. Behavior is not driven by fear or duty, but by belief and preparation. The door opened. White air rushed in like a wave. Visibility dropped instantly. Even the drone's sensors blinked. Still, the humans stepped forward, hoods up, visors down, suits sealed. The first one held a scanning tool. The rest followed closely. Zeltor launched a second drone. This one was designed for deep movement, made to hover through low space and adapt to freezing winds. It followed the humans down into the ice cave, steady and silent. The world inside the cave was alien. Walls of frozen stone glowed faint blue from buried minerals. The path was narrow. Every footstep echoed. Cold mist swirled near the ground, too heavy to rise. But the humans didn't look back. Deeper they went, farther from light, farther from warmth. They reached a pocket chamber, a natural bubble in the ice, where sensors had been left days before. This was their test point, not a place to hide, but a place to observe themselves. Zeltor hovered his drone near a corner. Out of view, the humans spread out. One sat near a wall, monitoring breath patterns. Another placed a sensor in the ice. The leader, the same one who had built the igloo, set up a timer and spoke into a recorder. Beginning deep exposure trial. No talking for the next 4 hours. Just breath, thought, and cold. And then, silence, no movement, just humans. Sitting still in the heart of ice, Zeltor's data feed showed what machines couldn't explain. Brain patterns, slowing, heartbeat, steadying, body heat dropping, but controlled. It wasn't just endurance, it was balance. A kind of harmony with discomfort that Zeltor had never seen before. They weren't fighting nature. They were meeting it, understanding it, living in it. Without fear, he whispered into his own recorder. They become one with the environment, not by force, by choice. This is not resistance, it is alignment. As if their minds were built for these moments of extreme challenge. Time passed, 4 hours, 6, no movement, just breathing, just presence. Then, as quietly as it began, the trial ended. The timer blinked. One by one, the humans stood, stretched gently, and without a word, began walking back the way they came. Still no talking, still calm. And Zeltor understood. The silence was part of the lesson. Not every strength needs sound. Outside, the sun was rising once more. Weak light spread across the horizon. painting long shadows across the snow. The humans emerged from the cave, coated in frost but unshaken. They moved toward the hidden base, footsteps firm. Inside his vessel, Zelter stood for the first time. In hours, he stared down at the world below, quiet, endless, white. But now, he didn't see danger. He saw something sacred. He opened his final report to the Galactic Council. Earth's people are not mastering survival. They are redefining it. Where others build machines to avoid nature, they build discipline to walk through it. They do not fear the dark or cold. They enter it to understand themselves. In silence, in stillness, in isolation, they sharpen the one thing we never expected, resilience of spirit. He paused, then added, if they can thrive in the places we call unlivable, what happens when they set their eyes beyond Earth? What happens when they decide to prepare for more than storms and ice? We should not fear their strength. We should study their silence. The message was sent. The drones were recalled, and above the Earth, in the sky where stars watched from a distance, an alien scholar realized something simple. The future doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it walks quietly through frozen storms. And sometimes, the strongest message a species can send is what it does when no one is supposed to be watching.